Hey everybody, Jamie Trull, your favorite profit strategist and financial literacy coach, here to talk about pricing. So one of the most common questions that I get is always around whether you're pricing your product or your service at the right amount. And this is something I really love to talk about because it really goes to the heart of making sure that you're making a profit and making sure that your pricing is sustainable. So in this video, I just want to kind of do the intro level on pricing and the most important things you can start with to make sure that your pricing makes some sense. Okay, so this is the very first sense check that you can do. So right now, what I want you to do is download a file that is completely free. Go to balancecfo.com/by hour. Okay, balancecfo.com/by hour. And I want you to go ahead and get that delivered to you because we're going to be walking through how to use that spreadsheet if you don't already have it. So I'm going to jump right on into this. We're going to talk about service business and then we're going to talk about product businesses because there are a little bit of differences obviously there that we need to cover in how we figure this out. But what I want to show you here is really around how you come up with your dollar per hour. Do you know your numbers? Do you know how much money you're making right now? Okay, so here we are. We are in the service business tab. You'll see there's two tabs. There's a service tab and there is a product tab. Whichever one you are, pick it. I'm going to talk about service first. It works pretty similarly with product, and then we'll quickly look at the differences with product. But really what I want to bring your attention to here is the end goal is really to figure out how much owner pay per hour you are making, okay? Because likely, unless you charge per hour, you probably don't know that. And a lot of times, honestly, even if you charge per hour, you're probably not looking at those costs after you've taken out all the operating costs and everything else that goes with it. So this really tells you you're all in dollar per hour once you take into account all the other expenses that you have as a business. So I'm actually going to go ahead and put some numbers in here. Okay, so I have gone ahead and filled in this with an example. So let's walk through this really, really quickly so that you can do your own with your own numbers. So the first line says revenue per service sold. So really you're going to figure out what you sell. So the first step is really figuring out what is it that you sell, what are the packages you sell if you're a service business, or the services that you sell. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick, okay, I have 3 packages, let's say. In this example, let's say I'm an accountant and I sell 3 different packages and those packages vary in cost. One of them is $100 a month, one of them is $200 a month, and one of them is $300 a month, okay? So, and I typically, let's say, keep my clients on for the full year. So you can see in here that I've said the full value of service 1, because I'm taking $100 times 12, is $1,200. That's how much I would make in a year off that service. That's the package that I'm selling. If you only sell like a 3-month package or something like that, then only put what that 3-month package would cost. So it just depends on how your business is set up, okay? But make sure that that is showing for an entire client what normally a client would be buying from you in a year. Then we're going to come on down to cost of sales, okay? There's no such thing as cost of goods sold for a service business. It's really cost of sales. And what this is talking about are direct cost of sales. So this is not rent, utilities. These are direct costs that actually are incremental that relate to the service that you're providing. So for example, if you have direct costs that you're paying, so in this case, maybe I'm paying some subscription fees directly for my clients so that those amounts actually move, that amount will incrementally move when I add new clients. So every additional client maybe costs me $50 because I have to go get a new subscription for them. Then I would put that amount into this direct supplies and other direct costs. The other thing that would go in here for a service business would be labor. So this would be if you are outsourcing any of your client work to other people that you are then paying, either as a contractor or maybe even as an employee, okay? How much is that costing you when you sell one of those services? So all of this will be estimates. It's totally fine if you don't know these numbers off the top of your head. This is just to give you an indication. And we have a sense check down here that we can actually see if this is making sense towards the end. The next thing we are going to obviously have to take into account is how many we sell. right? That's important to know. So we are going to actually put in estimates for how much you sold of each one of these. So you can either look at it looking backward or you can look at it going forward, whatever makes the most sense to you. You're going to put in some numbers to show how much of each of these products you either sold or expect to sell. Now you can play around with this. This is what's fun about having a template like this, that after you kind of see where you are now, you can put different numbers in to see, okay, if I made certain changes, what would that mean for my dollar per hour? And what would that mean for my total sales? Okay, so then it's going to come down here and talk about your total gross profit for each of those different services, how much they're expected to contribute to your overall gross profit. Now we're going to come down to the owner labor calculation. And the owner labor calculation is an interesting one. So this is where it starts to get a little bit fuzzier, right? But this is where we have to value our own time. Now, some of you guys already are paying yourself, maybe you're an S Corp or C Corp and you have a salary, and that's great. But for now, we're gonna ignore that, okay? So up here on the labor, only include people that are not you, because we're gonna add in your labor down here below, okay? So I want you to estimate for each of those package types or services that you sell, how much time does it take you to deliver that? Okay, so I've kind of estimated this out in my spreadsheet here where I've said, okay, for that $1,200 package, and make sure you're aligning it with what you put here to deliver that full $1,200 worth of a package, which in my example here is a full year's worth of work, but could be 3 months, just depends on what you sell. How many hours is that going to take me? So my estimate is, okay, that it's going to take me 15 hours. And then I did that for each of the 3 services. Okay. Now this is an important line, you guys. This next line here where it says amount you make per hour before other operating costs. This is essentially your gross profit per hour. It's what you make per hour before we adjust for all those kind of other costs, all that other overhead costs. This is what you make. So it's really important. You can see here that service 1 makes me $77 an hour. Okay, service 2 makes me $115 an hour, and service 3 makes me $97 an hour. Why is that important? Well, when you look at this, to me, I might have thought, you know what, I need to sell as many as I can of service 3 because it's the most highly priced, but really because of how long it takes me to deliver on that and the cost of it overall, it actually is not as profitable per hour as some of the other services that I'm providing, okay? So it can give you an indication of which thing do you need to be really putting your time and effort into selling. Okay, then we're gonna keep going because we wanna look overall though, how much are we making per hour? Because guess what, you guys? There are more expenses than just direct expenses, and there are more things we spend our time on as a business owner than just delivering our services or our products to our clients, right? We have a whole host of other things that we do as a business owner. We have to value that time too, okay? So let's keep going. So the next place here, you'll see total annual operating costs. This is an estimate, okay? This is not meant to be perfect. You may not know this off the top of your head. Maybe even if you want to take last year's tax return and you can actually go and look up what your total business expenses were from your tax return that were not kind of those direct expenses, okay? You can put that in. That would be rent, utilities, education, travel, really all that other stuff you spend money on, software, right? As a business owner, that goes in this line. And then the next thing that we're gonna do is it's gonna come down to asking you for your average weekly hours spent on business development. That's all the other stuff that we just talked about, right? So above here, when we go to this line above, okay, this was just talking about hours spent on client work to deliver that product or service. But what about sales, marketing, bookkeeping, all the other things, managing a team if you have one, all the other things we spend time on that aren't directly related to the service or product that we're providing to the client, okay? That is where you're gonna add in an amount here. So what I put in here was just average weekly hours you spend doing all the other things, okay? So for some people, you might spend most of your time on client development. For some people, you might have quite a bit of hours that actually are spent on other things. If you actually sat and added them up, it's probably more than you expect it to be. So for this instance, I put 15 in here as my estimate. About 15 hours per week is what I expect that I spend on business development. Now we can do a quick sense check here. If you're not sure, if you really don't know, this is going to help you do a sense check. So if we come down to total owner hours worked annually, okay, down here, that's going to basically be taking your total based on what you put above for the number of services that you're selling. And it's also going to add in those business development hours. So it's going to come up with a total, and then it's going to divide it by 50 because you guys, we all need at least 2 weeks off, right? We're all probably taking at least 2 weeks off a year in total. So we're going to divide by 50 instead of 52. And that came down to being 35 hours a week. Okay. Now, sense check that. Say, okay, that makes sense. Or if that doesn't make sense, then maybe one of your other numbers is not correct above. So for example, maybe when you assigned hours to each of those different services, you might have been under in the amount that should have been in there. Maybe you need to increase those because maybe you really are spending more time than you realize. Maybe you're spending more time on other things that are not client services or client facing, and you need to increase this average weekly hours spent on business development. So let's say in this case, I'm like, nope, I always work at least a 40-hour week every single week. So I'm going to put in 20 here. That probably told me that, yes, I have another 5 hours that I actually spend on business development, whether I realize it or not. So now I'm back to my 40 hours. So make sure that you do that sense check to make sure that what it's spitting out to you makes sense. Because if you know that you work, say, 40 hours a week and it's coming out telling you you work 15, then something is going on with the calculation. Okay, so when we're done with all of that, you can see at the bottom, it spits out a total owner pay per hour after all your operating costs. Okay, so that's taking into account all of those different operating costs and coming up with how much you actually made. Okay, so I want you to look at that number and determine, how does that feel to you? That's what you would compare against a job. Let's say you were going to go get a job that's an hourly wage job, right? That is what you would compare that against. That's the amount that's left for you to actually pay yourself with at the end of the day. Now, if that number is really, really low and you're like, heck, I could work at McDonald's for more than that, then there is something that you're going to need to change. Or if it's a lot lower than what you were hoping or expecting, right? Or that you could get on the marketplace, you probably need to change something. Now, in the very beginning of a business, you guys, the number's going to be real low, if it's positive at all. But as you have been in business for a little while, then you want to have a profitable business. You want to be showing a decent number there in that spot, okay? So what to do then if that number is way too low? Well, there's a couple of things you can do, okay? Number one, you can look at what are you going to do from a pricing perspective. Maybe you need to increase some prices. Maybe not for all products, but maybe for some products or services. You can look at your costs. Are your costs just really high and there's something that you can cut? Or can you reduce the amount of hours that you spend on your service or product? Okay, are there efficiencies that you can find? Those are the three kind of things to think about if that number is not the number that you want it to be. But the most important thing, it's hard to make decisions on what to do if we don't know our numbers first, which is why this is the most important first step, is just understanding how you're performing and how much you are actually making, okay? Okay, so real quick, I'm just gonna go over to products. It's very similar, but I'm gonna point out a couple of the differences. So if you're a product, the main difference, the calculation is all the same, okay? But I want you to put your products out. If you have more than 5 products, then just group them as best you can to kind of get an indication, okay? But you'll notice there are more things listed under cost of goods, okay? So you're gonna have direct supplies, materials, packaging, shipping, labor. All of those things are listed out because those are all direct costs of the thing that you're making. So you want to make sure that you're considering them when you're determining your total gross profit, okay? And then again, we're going to add in and do the exact same calculation where you estimate the total number of hours. Let's say you are an Etsy shop, and so you're making these couple of different products. Estimate how long it takes you to make them. This is one of the biggest issues that I see all the time with people who are making handmade goods, is that they are not properly factoring in their time into their pricing. So make sure that you kind of do those calculations and see where that works out, and make sure that when we come down to that owner pay per hour after operating costs, you're making some money. There may be products that are unprofitable for you that you need to get rid of or change the pricing on, right? So this will be the first indication where you can really tell what you need to do next. But always, we got to know our numbers first. So I hope that this spreadsheet has been helpful for you guys. Go make sure that you download your own balancedcfo.com/by hour. And you can go ahead and grab it. I've also linked it down below if you don't have one yet. And also make your way over into my Facebook group, Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners. That's also linked below, where I'm answering your questions about all of the things. I'll see you next time.